So normally when I start these videos I have like a whole explanation of my idea and where I got the inspiration and all this background info. I don't have an explanation for this project beyond I thought it would be funny. Is this whole project just one extended pun on the phrase plate armor? So what if it is? So basically today I'm going to be making a night costume that can be fully disassembled into a full picnic setup. Blanket, plates, cups, food, everything. And again, you may be asking why? And to that I say, why not? Cause I wanna. Cause I think it would be fun. Let's just all take a look at the design. So the design process for this project was basically taking all of the things you might need for a picnic and figuring out how to attach them to my body. We have the plate armor chest piece, as I mentioned before, the classic red gingham picnic blanket as a cape, a cutting board as my shield, and a baguette as my sword. I'll have cutlery and glasses and a thermos strapped on as accessories, and possibly a pack to carry more food, but I'm not sure about that yet. The wicker basket is of course an iconic element to the whole picnic theme that will be missing since I am going to become the basket. To make sure that texture is included in the look, I'm going to make a wicker knight's helmet, and I think that's as good a place as any to start. Okay, so for the helmet, I bought a pattern off of Etsy for an EVA foam knight's helmet. I will link that below if you're interested. I've already gone ahead and made a paper mock-up. I made a few adjustments to this, but I think it's going to work out overall. It's a little wonky, but you know, this pattern's meant to be made out of EVA foam, not notebook paper. It's also not meant to be made out of woven placemats. But that's what I'm gonna do, so we'll see how well this goes. I got these at the thrift store. They're just the, you know, typical woven placemats. They're just like a spiral of a braid stitched together. And I have two kinds. So I've got these that are just like a solid beige, pretty boring, and they're stitched together with like a fishing line. So they're very crinkly. They're not the nicest. But then I've also got these that are much closer to the color that I want. They're like a blend of colors, it has more texture, and the thread stitching them together is like maybe cotton, maybe polyester, but it's not fishing line. So they're very nice. The problem is I have 2 of these and I have 4 of these, and I think I need 3. So just these 2 will not cut it. So I'm going to use the plainer ones and then paint the helmet once it's finished. I'd rather the whole thing be a consistent color than parts of it be exactly what I wanted and parts of it not be quite so good, but with the paint job I think it'll be okay. Like I said, the pattern is meant to be cut out of EVA foam, and typically with EVA foam you would use contact cement. This is an EVA foam, so my plan is to try and sew it together. Like I don't want a seam allowance because that's just going to be like too thick and bulky, and I don't think I can press this nice. So what I'm going to do is sew twill tape along the edges, and then I can use that as the seam allowance. I'm going to start cutting out my pattern pieces and we can start sewing this together, which I predict will be very annoying. Since these placemats are made from a long piece of braid spiraled and stitched together, I knew they would start to unravel once I cut into the threads. So I ironed on some feasible interfacing to try and hold everything together, and then I could mark and cut out my pattern pieces. Then I could begin assembling. I sewed twill tape along one edge of the pattern piece and then sewed the next piece to the twill tape as well. I kept sewing piece by piece, following the assembly order as it was laid out in the pattern instructions. As the helmet began to take shape, it became more and more difficult to shove through my sewing machine, but I persisted and was able to machine sew the entire helmet base. The main alteration I made to the pattern was shortening the jaw plates and leaving the seam under the chin open to make it easier to get on and off. And I added a little tab to one half to create an overlap for a closure later on. I also bound the raw edges with twill tape so I wouldn't have to worry about shards of plastic straw jabbing me in the face. Okay, so it is the next day. I've gotten the whole base helmet all assembled. I then went in and reinforced the seams with some hot glue, and that definitely helped with the structure and shape of the whole helmet overall. And now I'm going over and covering the seams. I took one of the placemats apart, so now I just have the loose braid. So I'm just using that to cover the seams since they're pretty rough and not very pretty looking. So once I get that done, I just need to do the faceplate, and I'm going to be using more of the braid for that. I think if I were to just cut these pieces out of the placemats, these thin portions would just fall apart. So I just need to cut out the larger portions like here and these bits out of the placemat scraps and then use the unraveled placemat for the thin pieces.
With all of the helmet pieces assembled, I can move on to painting. I first did a wash of watered down brown acrylic paint, then dry brushed on a lighter brown. Then I added some heavy-duty snaps to attach the faceplate to the helmet. Setting the snaps was a struggle since I needed to work on the inside of the helmet. I ended up turning it partially inside out, which gave me a great view, but not the camera. But the snaps made it so I could hinge the faceplate up and down, or just remove it entirely.
It kind of looks like Bender from Futurama, or like a more intense version of those medieval beekeepers.
With the helmet complete, I moved on to the chest plate of plates. I wanted to use plain white plates for this piece to keep things simple since there was already a lot going on in the design, and I wanted them to be plastic because A, I was worried about breaking ceramic plates, and B, ceramic plates were more likely to be nice plates, aka expensive, and I didn't want to potentially ruin nice plates. So I got these cheap plastic plates from the thrift store, but then I noticed the label on the back said designed by Massimo Vignelli, a designer I learned about in college. And at first I was like, wow, my degree is actually useful. But then I realized these might actually be nice plates. So I looked at the brand and the designer and yep, these plates retail for $60 a set. And they were originally designed in the 60s and they have this whole history and they're literally in the Museum of Modern Art. So like, as a concept and a part of design history, these might be nice plates, but I only spent $5 for 4, and you can't even put them in the microwave, so I think it's fine. For the armor piece, I needed the plates to be removable, so I did some mocking up with paper plates and worked out a pretty good system. For this to work, I needed to attach loops to the backs of the plates that I could thread webbing through. I used some of the leftover placemat braid because it was made out of plastic, and therefore it could be washed along with the plate and not soak up water and food stuff like fabric would. I zigzag stitched 2 pieces of braid together to make a wider loop, and then glued these to the backs of the plates with E6000.
Okay, so I just want to walk you guys through how the plate armor pieces are going to get assembled. So I have this canvas webbing and some metal strap slider buckle pieces. It goes through here and then here. I don't know if you can do the same thing I'm blocking with my hand. 3. And then back in through here. And then the second plate comes in, and it goes into that loop, and then over, and there'll be a snap here to hold it in place. So like this will all hang like in the front on my chest, the canvas webbing continues over the shoulder, and then I do the same thing on the back. And I'll have another piece here, so it's like straps.
I roughly strung up the rest of the plates so I could do a quick test fit, and things were looking, I don't know about good, but they were looking the way I wanted them to. You can see here I used ribbons to close the sides, but for the final piece I used more webbing and snaps. All that was left to do was finish the ends of the webbing with a zigzag stitch and add in the snaps, and the chest plate of plates was finished. Okay, so for the cloak slash picnic blanket, I wanted just a simple red and white gingham, but I did have a lot of like specific details about the fabric that I wanted. So first of all, I wanted just red and white gingham, no other colors. Second of all, I wanted the pattern to be fairly large, like 1-inch squares at least. I also wanted the fabric to be at least mostly cotton or some other natural fiber, and I wanted the gingham pattern to be woven into the fabric as opposed to printed, because if it was printed, A, I don't think it would look as good, and B, the image is only going to be on one side and the back is going to be blank. I could make the cape double-faced and just sew 2 layers of the fabric together, but I didn't want to do that. I spent so long looking around trying to find exactly what I wanted, and I just couldn't. It was either like not the right material or the print was too small. I got to the point where I was just like, what if I make a quilt? What if I get solid red, white, and pink and just cut squares and sew them together? But luckily I did not have to make a quilt for this
silly costume because I came across this tablecloth at IKEA, and it is almost exactly what I want. It is 100% natural material. It is not 100% cotton. So it's 80% cotton and 20% jute. Like the stuff they use to make burlap potato sacks. I don't know why you would want to make a tablecloth out of jute, other than the fact that jute is a very cheap fiber. That's why they make potato sacks out of it. So it cuts down the cost, I guess, and that's probably exactly why they did it. But yeah, it's itchy. I've done some stuff to try and make it a little less itchy. I've soaked it in vinegar water, and I've also laundered it in hot water, and it definitely helped. It's softer than it was, but it's perfect for this project. The plan for this cape was to have a rectangle with a channel and a piece of rope in that channel so it could be gathered into a cape or laid flat like a blanket. Since this was a tablecloth, I didn't have to worry about finishing any of the edges because they were already hemmed. But the tablecloth was a bit too long. I could cut it down, but then I would have to sew a hem. I staunchly refused to do this, so I decided to fold over the excess length and make it into a capelet. I could just fold the fabric in half and stitch a few inches from the folded edge to make a channel, but then I would have this floppy bit of the channel when the fabric was laid flat. So instead, I folded the fabric over, stitched it, then pressed and stitched the floppy channel bit over so it would lay flat. Then I just threaded some rope into the channel and tied some chonky knots at the ends to keep them from coming out. I used a tutorial to tie these. They're called A-star knots apparently. I had never heard of them before. I'll link it below. This website was so helpful. It's a whole database of knots with step-by-step photo instructions and video tutorials. It's such a helpful resource. I'm so glad I found it. That finished off the cape, and I really like how it came out considering how simple it is. You can wear it with the capelet out for a little floof, or on the inside for a simpler look, or flipped up like a hood. And the whole thing can be easily flattened out into a blanket. With the cape done, I moved on to the shield, which was super simple. I got this wooden cutting board at the thrift store, and then I just needed to add a handle to it. So I cut out a long rectangle of leather, cut some holes into the four corners, drilled some corresponding holes in the back of the cutting board, and attached the handle with screws. The next piece was the fruit bandolier, and this one proved to be the problem child of the bunch. I started out following this tutorial, which I'll link below. It's a perfectly fine tutorial, I just struggled to get the spacing of the knots right. She recommended working around a cylindrical object, so I used my thermos as a base, but this ended up being way too tight. I couldn't get a single clementine in there. So I tried padding out the thermos by wrapping it in fabric, but this time it was way too loose. Everything just kept falling out through the holes. I tried a few more times off camera, trying to get the spacing of the knots for the netting just right, but I finally gave in and switched to crochet, a technique I'm much more familiar with. I worked double crochet net in the round to create a long mesh tube. This worked wonderfully. I was able to get the sizing of the tube just right, but the open spaces in the net were so small you could barely see the fruit inside, so I unraveled my work one more time and did the same thing, but with a treble crochet net. This time, it was perfect. The open end of the tube splits into two flaps that taper down and reconnect to form the strap. I used thermal stitch for the strap because it's a very stable stitch and doesn't stretch too much. I just needed to add a rectangular ring and a clasp to the end to finish it up. Okay, so for the baguette sword, I haven't got the baguette yet because I don't want it to get stale. I don't want it to just be bread. I would like to make a kind of like fabric cover that I can sleeve onto the end that'll look like the handle of a sword. So that's gonna be the last thing that I work on. But what I can work on is the scabbard for my sword. I have gotten this skinny little basket from the thrift store that I think is gonna be perfect. It's a nice tall narrow basket and it's got a little leather strap so I can hook this onto a belt, and it also came with a little baby inside of it. It came with a second smaller basket attached to it. I don't know, I can put some strawberries or something in there. The only thing I really need to do to this is put a lining in it so I don't have bread touching thrift store basket, and also there is a hole in there, so I'm just gonna make a really simple lining, just like a little tube sock thing, and then somehow attach that around the handle there. How do I do that? I want the edge to like fold over the side, so I'm gonna have to do some sort of weird stuff to get it around this handle. I can probably make it like tab over, and then I don't know if I'll put snaps on it or something, but I'll figure it out.
For the thermos holder, I decided to use the remaining placemat braid to weave basically a thermos koozie, creating a spiral for the base and then working up the sides of the thermos. After securing the ends with hot glue, I wove in some rope for the strap and thought I was done, but realized I had made the sleeve way too short, so the strap didn't come up high enough on the thermos and it would only hang sideways. To fix this, I cut out the spiral base of my woven koozie so it could slide up further on the thermos. This let the thermos hang correctly, but led to some other issues. To counteract the effects of gravity, I crisscrossed 2 pieces of rope at the bottom before weaving them into the sleeve. I cut one short, just to the length of the koozie, and left the other long to use as the strap, knotting the ends together.
Okay, so it's a new day. I'm working on some of the smaller accessories for this whole outfit. I have these little wine glasses that came with a picnic basket set that I got at the thrift store a few years ago. So I'm making a little belt holster for these. It's basically just gonna be a rectangle with some little tabs that snap around the stem and some little loops that can feed onto a belt, so I can have these like on my hip.
While I had the duck canvas out, I made a quick thigh sheath to hold cutlery. This was also super simple, just a double layer of canvas with straps at the sides that connected with parachute buckles, and lengths of elastic running from top to bottom, stitched down to create little channels to hold knives and forks.
I have obtained a baguette. The baguette is secured. I will set it down because it's very rustly. So now I can make the baguette sword hilt, which is going to be the last piece. So I think it's basically just going to be a little bag that goes on like the lower third of the baguette, and then there'll be little pieces that stick off the sides to make like the cross guard. I think I'm going to put like a drawstring on the opening so I can make it like looser or tighter depending on the bread, because bread comes in all different shapes and sizes, and that's what makes our world beautiful. See here. Remind me not to film outside in the summer ever again. I could really use a picnic right now. This is gonna fall, so. Move you a little closer. Ooh, yes. And I could really use a glass of lemonade right now. That is a crusty baguette. Okay, so, ta-da. I think overall, it went pretty good. It's real warm. I know picnics are like a summertime activity, not in Florida. Putting a wicker basket on your head isn't the best idea. That's a nice sandwich right there. It's, you know, kind of cumbersome to wear, but I mean, it's an armor set, so like I feel like those are typically pretty clunky. But that's it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you could leave a like and a comment. That would really help me out. If you want to see more projects from me, you can subscribe. I post every other Friday. And I'm going to finish my lunch. Oh, butterfly.
Thank you so much for watching. Bye, friends.